And applying for the state disability, like I said, it's fairly straightforward. You can apply online, you can do it through mail. You need to do it between 9 and 49 days after you're disabled. So now I knew Susie's work background, and I knew that she was contributing to our 401k plan. Well, I told her, I said, well, Susie, you can get a distribution out of your 401k for medical costs. And you can get the distribution up to the total amount you've contributed plus the amount that your employer's matched that you're vested in. Now that's going to depend on your plan. You can look at your regular quarterly statements and it will have a vesting statement on there. Usually by your 6th year in a plan, you're fully vested and all that money would be available that you could take a distribution out of 401k. But I need to stress it's for medical expenses. It's not for general living, but it's for medical. Life insurance. So Susie, as part of our group health, we have a $15,000 life insurance policy, and as a benefit of that life insurance policy, you can get what they call acceleration on the death benefit. Some of the more progressive call it living benefits. And on our policy at work, you can get 50% of that benefit paid out to you while you're still living. Susie goes, well, I do have another life insurance policy for $100,000. And that's where this Viatical Settlements comes in. But what this is you can sell your life insurance policy to a third party. You can take it, and depending upon your circumstances, they will give you somewhere between 30 and 80% of the face value of that policy. Now what happens is they become the owner of the policy, and all the benefits go to them. But that means you get the money now, and if you have some expensive treatments, there's an option. So we now have gone through this, and where at first Susie thought she was in where she had no resources. We've identified a couple resources for her. She's got the SDI, she's got her 401k, which she can tap into, and she's got the life insurance acceleration. Chose not to do anything for her at this time on selling her life insurance because she didn't really appear to need it at that time. So the next step was to look at Susie's expenses. Well, housing costs, probably the biggest part of every one of our budgets. I don't know many landlords or mortgage companies that are going to be very helpful in reducing this cost, but what I suggested to Susie that what she do is talk to her landlord, explain her situation, and see if she could at least have him understand that between the time when she's going to stop receiving employment from income and these other things can get in line, that she could have a little grace period. Who knows what someone's going to say, depending upon the circumstances, depending upon the person, particularly if they have a friend or relative who has gone through this, there might be a lot more understanding than not. Utilities, if you have specialized equipment installed in your house that you need for medical reasons, you can call the utility and they will give you additional baseline allocation. And if you look at your Edison bill, you look on it and you see all those numbers and stuff, you can see there's baseline, which is a couple hundred kilowatts, that's at a very low rate, and then over baseline's at a much higher rate. So you get a little benefit there that if you're going to be using equipment that requires power, it can not cost you nearly as much. Local transportation, obviously I thought she could save a little money on transportation. She's not going to be driving to work. As I came up here, I saw Dial-A-Ride out front, and particularly useful for going back and forth to treatments. And finally, travel for treatment. I think a lot of the treatment centers that I've looked and read about will provide housing. My wife used to work for City of Hope. I know at City of Hope they have housing on campus for patients and families. So that's always an option to save on expense. I also ran through a couple programs that talked about being able to get airfare. It looked like it would be something you could research and look at, but it looked like it might be kind of hard to do that. When I looked at Susie's immediate thoughts on her budget, and the big thing that jumped out there was this huge thing on medical expenses. Well, the message on the medical expenses was number one, keep your insurance. You know, when you first look at a budget, it looks like an easy savings, particularly if you're going to have to look at a COBRA basis, where you're having to pay the whole cost of the insurance. Don't let that insurance lapse. Keep the insurance going. Borrow the money or get the distribution from the 401ks. Keep the insurance. And even if you can move your plan up, if you're an HMO, to move it to a PPO, do it. Because it's going to give you much better care if you're under an HMO. The real difference between the HMO and the PPO is in the HMO, your doctor determines what your care is. With your PPO, you determine what your care is. If you're unhappy with the care you're getting and your HMO, you can appeal, but you're probably going to lose. On a PPO, if you don't like the care, you can switch a doctor, you can try other treatments, and there's your question here, what kind of treatments they're going to pay for or not. You know, insurance companies, and I apologize to anyone who works in the insurance industry, I tell my insurance broker every time he comes the same phrase, and he's sick of me. I say, do you know the meaning of the word insurance? And I don't think they do. They're more in the business of not paying claims than they are in paying claims. But the best advice I can give you if a claim's denied, resubmit it, get the documentation. If you can explain why you think it should be covered, if you can get a doctor to sign on to it, it might help. A lot of times the second time around, something will go through where maybe it first didn't go through. You know, I've worked for small and medium business my whole life, and I've picked a lot of insurance plans. Anyone that's self-funded, boy, they better have deep pockets, because it can get tough.
So you're hoping that your employer was not self-funded or was self-funded?
You want the plan not self-funded.
Not self-funded is better.
Yes. Okay, and I think it's important that you keep very good records. You can file timely. If you try to read an insurance policy, they're fairly indecipherable. Maybe the 10th time through they start to make sense. Try to learn the procedures, learn what will work in getting something submitted, and just try to stay on top of it, because there's time limits on all this stuff, and the sooner you can get to it, the better, even as difficult as it might be. And I don't need to tell people in this room about difficulty. And be persistent and keep talking to them. You can wear them down a little bit. Generally, the carrier, if it's a major case, you can get a caseworker assigned
by your insurance company.
By the insurance. It's an employee of the insurance company that will be the one point of contact for you. There are people out there who have set themselves up in businesses as advocates. I mean, from what I've seen, it's a little mixed on that. Some of them have apparently done a very good job, and some of them are just going to take a little more of your money. I don't have any that I could recommend, but it could be something to look at. And a lot of times, you know, maybe Marty knows more of this. There's a lot of times there are RNs and people who understand the medical business and understand the terms and speak the language. So that might be an option also.